This latest source of flare-up sparks off from the outcome of the Pacific Island Forum in Tuvalu, by which the Pacific leaders came out very strongly to call on identifying the root of the causes of the conflict, as well as for the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights to visit the region, especially with the violence and escalation of this human rights situation. It also sparks off the racial slurs that emerged on the pre-independence day in Surabaya, by which Papuan students were called with racial slogans. And that sparks the uprising throughout West Papua. And to date, we are seeing this civil resistance, especially the non-violence resistance that is happening throughout West Papua in the last 2 weeks.
And so who made those racial slurs against the West Papuan students?
Reports have emerged in Indonesia, especially through Indonesian media, that the racial slurs have been used by the Ormas group, or what is called the Indonesian nationalist gangs, and which they accuse the Papuan students of pulling down the Indonesian national flag and dumping it in the sewer, by which up until today there is no evidence of who did that, or nor did the state identify the perpetrator. But what really happened on that day, on the 17th of August, was that the anti-terrorism unit, the Detachment 88, which the Australian government trained and funded, break through the gates and the windows and arrested 43 Papuan students on that day. Thankfully, they've been released without charge.
Yeah. Okay, so how important is this planned visit by the United Nations Human Rights Commissioner?
It is critically important, and the time is now for this visit, given that we're seeing in West Papua alone, over the last 9 months, the conflict in Duga, since December up until today, there is no solution to this issue, and we're seeing reports that have come out in the World Council of Churches visit early this year, the U.S. Department reports of the escalation in violence, as well as the human rights situation. This visit is very timely and very critically important, so that the assessment of this human rights situation could be assessed impartially, objectively, and also to identify the root causes by which the grievances that the Papuans have been calling over the years, especially with the historical grievances, the political grievances, and the human rights situation. So this is critically important.
And so what is your ultimate goal?
So the ultimate goal now in West Papua right now, across, as I'm speaking, in the town of Manokwari, people are going out to the streets, and they will occupy the government spaces and demand that this visit has to be immediate. But at the same time, that there needs to be a leadership that Australia needs to also take up within the Pacific to identify and look into the root causes of the conflict in West Papua. So this is what the call for from West Papua, as well as to the regional community, and especially with the leadership in the region.
So the protests are going to continue despite these warnings from authorities?
Yes, the protests will continue, and today there's going to be a mass demonstration in the town of Manokwari.
Are you concerned for the safety of people there, considering what's happening with Indonesian security, the amount of Indonesian security forces that have been going into West Papua?
Yes, we remain concerned of the increasing numbers of the deployment of the combined security forces, especially the police and also the military. And what we're seeing over the weekend is the deployment of the special elite forces. And these are Kostrad and Kopassus forces. And so at this stage, that remains highly a matter of concern. And this could lead into this horizontal conflict, as well as the scenarios that we're seeing back in 20 years ago in East Timor, in Aceh, in Riau. And this is what we are seeing, that with the increased number of deployment of security forces, we're reaching to that stage where that immediate need for intervention is right now.
Isn't it the case that your ultimate goal is actually an independence vote for West Papua?
That has been since the day one when Indonesia occupied West Papua, and we remain steadfast to that commitment and the call for independence, and as well as understanding that with geopolitical importance and security importance in this region, it is also important that Australian government to step up, by which they have recognized and also signed up to the regional commitment for the visit of the UN, as well as to identify the root causes of this conflict in the region. So,
why is it the case in your argument that an independence vote for West Papua is absolutely essential and justified?
What is essential is that if we look into this early 60s, Australia was already committed to support the pathway for the independence of the region. And in 1961, on the 1st of December, that was recognized through the Morning Star flag, which is now an outlaw symbol, as well as the national flag and a legislative body that to represent the aspiration of the people. What happened was the 1963 annexation, and then the so-called Act of Free Choice in 1969 to whitewash this whole process. And so for West Papuans, we are calling for our right to determine the future and also to exercise that right, by which we did not do that in 1969. So the legal and political argument is that we have not exercised that right to determine our future. So that has been our commitment, and the leadership under the United Liberation Movement for West Papua, by which Benny Wenda is the chairman, is what we're calling for, the process of a referendum as the democratic solution for West Papua.
And just finally and briefly, is it the case that you're running out of time for that independence vote because there are more and more Indonesian nationals who are coming to settle in West Papua?
In looking at the demography, that will be the challenge, and we're seeing that in other cases already that happens. But in our commitment is that the time is still there, and the people are prepared to negotiate whatever that outcome. But for now, that is our commitment for that process, a democratic and noble means by which Papuans will achieve their independence. Okay.